My name's Rich, welcome back to Me, My Bike and I. Today I'm going to take the rest of the externals off the Honda VF750F engine. That's the gear shift mechanism, the oil pump driven gear and the neutral switch, which is right there. Let's get to it. Okay, first things first, I'm going to remove neutral switch. Looks to be an 8mm. Yep. It looks to be held on with the usual paint. A very tiny little lip underneath, so I'm going to pop a screwdriver in. Sometimes you've got no choice when there's absolutely no pry points and things are wedged. Like this all the way round. I don't think I can do anything bar try and separate those with a sort of a blade, really. Not much else I can do. Look at that lovely paint. That's what's holding it on. You just got to break the bond. So I don't know if you saw that, it broke the bond, but you can see that it's clinging on with there we go. Yeah, there's all gasket, to be fair, holding that on. You can see the remnants of that gasket actually holding that grommet on where the wiring runs through. Anyway, these are the two screws we need to get to. I do often wonder why manufacturers use these sorts of fixings inside engines. You can't get a good purchase on them, to be honest. If I had this engine lying on its side so I could put a bit of downforce on it, it'd be okay. But yeah, you need something that you can just get a solid lock on, like a hex socket or a hex head or something like that. But you know, with this you're always in danger of rounding the things off, and that's really problematic in the location that it's in. There's hardly a fixing on these engines that doesn't give me some sort of grief. It's literally just a matter of purchase, that's all. If that was a hex head, I'd have that off in absolutely no time, just with a ratchet. So you can see how sometimes just welding something on is the only way of doing it. Top of that is just past the 12 o'clock position, so let's see if that does move with the impact. Every single screw. The winner. Let's give the other one a bit of a whack as well, shall we? Oh yeah. This should do. just slip out, but it might just be, oh yeah, slip that away, that would help. It might be that this actual sort of rotor on the end of the selector drum is just fouling on it, in which case I might need to just slip that off. Yeah, might as well do that. Quite impressed with that impact, I tell you. This should be keyed on here in some way. Yes, right there, look, you've got a little locator for that little pin. So you can see that's a cam, and that's a contact switch, essentially. Just operates through the wire that we've just pulled off and negative earth. So essentially all that's doing is that rotates on the shift drum. It just makes contact with that switch we just took out and then puts your neutral light on. Right, well that was a quick job. Now we just need to get to the external shift mechanism and the oil pump drive gears chain, and that should be it for the externals. This is a very simple mechanism. You've got the end of your shift lever here. You can see I've actually rigged up my little shifter on the left side. So what actually is going on? Well, if I kick down on the lever, you can see that it's rotating that clockwise and pulling down on the mechanism here, and that torsion spring is essentially pulling it back into place. Same when you kick up. You've got a little spring in there just assisting. So if we're in neutral currently, because we've got the position between the first and the second gear there, you've got first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and I want to put it into first gear, essentially I would kick down on my lever and you can see it's pulling this that way. And you can see at the top of this mechanism you've got these little hooks on the end. So as you are kicking down, what that hook does is it grabs a little pin behind there, and if you kick up it pushes and grabs on a little pin behind there, so that you can rotate the end of this shift drum, or rotate the whole shift drum either anti-clockwise or clockwise to select your gears. So in this instance where we're in neutral, if I was to kick down it would pull on that pin, it would rotate this anti-clockwise, and then this wheel would sit in this recess here, and the torsion spring on the end there would hold it in place. Anyway, you get the idea. Let's get all these bits off. Right, I should just slip off there. Hopefully that chain just drops off. Still seems to be a little bit okay. Well, let's get that off first. Right, yeah, that is just a 10. That's good. Right, I'm just going to wedge that in there. Seems to be a handy little place for that to sit. Right, actually that's again, this is all about just holding it. If I could stop the engine from ticking, you need like 3 pairs of hands, that's the trouble. There you go. Gave it my own little impact. does just need pulling off there because it is keyed on. There's a big old washer there. That's a strange old colour. I don't know whether that's got some sort of coating on it or whether that's heat. Yeah, just keep track of all your fixings. I'm just going to put that bolt back in there, and essentially when I take the oil pump off, just there, that'll just come off and stay with it. That was what I was leaving against just there, a little bit of the casing, quite a convenient slot. Couldn't have physically done any harm, even if I'd have chipped a bit off. Got to pick your pry points, haven't you? So if you spin the engine round, you can see now much more clearly the other end where we took the water pump off, and you can just see that rotating. So you can see the gear on the back of the clutch turns that oil pump drive gear, and that spindle goes through the oil pump, pumping your oil around the engine, and then continues on its path through to the back of the water pump, which we removed in the last video. You've got to be careful with all your washers and things behind here, because you're going to have quite a lot of little thrust washers either side of different parts of the mechanism. Just keep track of where everything's coming from and where it goes. Like this little collar here I needed to remove. Seeing some little strawberry and blue on there, so yeah, I'm wondering about that washer. Some overheating in this engine at some point, I think. So anyway, just recalling where all this stuff sits, let's get this shift drum stopper arm off. Oh, that bit is. It's kind of sat down all the way, so we'll recall that for when we put it all back. I'm not sure the purpose of that bit. I'll probably come clearer when I put it all back together, actually. But none of it's keyed or anything, so you're kind of just relying on the pressure of, you know, how tight it's done up on the spindle to stop it from sort of spinning out. A bit strange, but there you go. Came off that way. It's easy to see how it goes back together. That's sat underneath there. Just being held under sort of the torque of the nut and the washer, oddly. So it's just a matter of slipping that out. It's nice and simple. A little wear, but nothing to be unexpected. Yeah, I wondered if that was part of that, but it does seem to be its own nut. Looks like a 12 to me anyway. No, I need something deeper. This is where you need perhaps a slightly better than a very basic set of tools. That's a deep socket. You see you've got a 1/2 inch drive on the back. So this steps it down from 1/2 inch to 3/8, and although I do have a 1/2 inch ratchet, oh, okay. Well, it wasn't a nut, it was a very strange thing indeed. I should just slip off now. Yeah, there's a washer. Yeah, it's a little concerning that I do seem to have 1 or 2 bits in here that are a little blued. That's definitely overheating. Okay, we've got to have the engine apart for the shift drum for obvious reasons. The shifter forks are going to be engaged with it, and it won't move. Blimey, 24mm. Anyway, makes sense just to take the oil temp gauge out. Oil temp sensor, I mean. Look at all that lovely paint. Talking of which, I'm hoping that's paint and not metal. Yeah, good, just paint. Right, oil gallery cap and O-ring, they need to come out. Oh, okay, I thought that was going to be really difficult, but looks like it just pulls out. Now, why would Honda do this? And it's definitely Honda, these are all original. Why have you got 2 hex head bolts and 1 screw head? Probably going to have the same issue with this as I had with the neutral switch. Right size screwdriver, absolutely no purchase. Risk of rounding it off. Oh, yeah, that don't want to go. I bet they'll turn as easy as anything. Yeah, that'll fit in there okay. Let's do this from the other side like I did with the neutral switch. Oh, I didn't feel like it had jarred it off, but clearly worked. Yeah, these are 8mm, so I've only got 1/4 inch square drives for sockets that small, so I do need something a little bit bigger to get a bit of a purchase on it. See how easy it is when you've got a good grip? They look like they're covered in aluminium oxide. That's the problem when you've got stainless fasteners into an aluminium thread. This is inside the engine now. How on earth are flecks of paint getting inside? Bear in mind, that is the rotor inside the engine, and that is paint. So it's just a matter of separating the two halves now. You can see the join there between the upper and lower case, and that's why we had to remove the input shaft bearing retainer. You can see right through it, look. And there is one bolt internally, because most of the bolts are external that hold the crankcases together, but there is one bolt there right in the middle. You can see it, that looks devilishly difficult to get a socket on. So I think that one's going to be a bit tricky. This is part of the problem, look there. Don't know whether that's been painted outside of the factory. Everything else looks pretty good. But you get to that and it looks like that bit's been hand painted, and that's probably what's flaking off and getting all over bits. Not a major problem, but it is if it gets into oil galleries. Causes overheating. It'd be a miracle if we actually rescue this engine. Could be gasket cement, I guess. Yeah, it could have been black RTV silicone. That retainer is sat right on the join. It would have been put on there very soon after those crankcases were put together, so that is always possible. Maybe this too, but I'm not sure how you get it all over there. Don't quite know how to get all the paint off these, whether to just try and do a bit of a DIY paint remover, but there's an awful lot of paint, or whether I should take them and get them blasted. I think that might be the easiest thing, because there's an awful lot of terrible paint on here, internally and externally. Well, I'm going to leave that episode here. In the next, I'm going to pull these crankcases apart and we can see what horrors await on the inside of this engine. If the externals are anything to go by, with that bluing on some of those thrust washers and on the splines on the end of that input shaft, I suspect there might be some overheating damage on the inside as well, possibly caused by the moisture getting into the crankcase. At the very least, it's going to be very frothy in there, so we shall see. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.